Standard 10th, Political Science, Chapter 4, Social and Political Movements. Let's go through the content. Introduction to political parties. What is a movement? Why movements? Important movements in India. Tribal movement. Farmers movement in India. Demands of the farmers movement. Trade unions. Women's movement. The Waterman of India. Environmental movements. Consumer movements. Introduction to political parties. Political parties adopts policies taking into interest of all farmers, laborers, businessmen, women, youth, and senior citizens. Compete for political power, win elections, and try to resolve problems of the common men. Adopts a comprehensive perspective. They cannot concentrate on just one particular issue. Takes all matters into consideration from national perspective and takes decisions. Expect to organize a program for the problems of all sections of the society. What is a movement? A movement is a collective action. People's active participation is expected in the movement. A movement can be formed when people come together in the interest of a particular issue. For example, pollution can be a single issue for which a movement can be created. A movement has a particular social objective or a focused problem. For example, movement A, movement against corruption aims at ending corruption. In our 9th standard also, we had certain movements like collective action movements like Beti Bachao Andolan, we have heard about that. Then Chipko movement, then women's empowerment. So many movements were there. Latni movement, Latni Morcha. So like these are social movements. And most recently, if you see, we have the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, that is Clean India. It is a very big movement where people they are trying to bring people together about the awareness of cleanliness. So these are all movements. They can be either for example, it is already stated for any one issue or maybe a group of issues. So it depends on what is the requirement of the time. Movements have a leadership. Leadership keeps the movement active. Now, what are the objectives of the movement? Program of action, strategy of agitation are decided by its leaders. A strong leadership makes movement effective. Now, movements have various motives, and to keep all these motives and objectives means aim. A leader is required. So, leadership is very important in any of these movements. So, the leader or the leadership, it can be a single leader or a group of leaders who keep this movement always active. Otherwise, if there is no leader, the followers will not know what to do. Then movements have organizations. They can have organizations. Maybe that is the aim. For example, now Swachh Bharat, cleanliness is one aim, but it can also have different groups within themselves to make it move better. Without an organization, it becomes difficult to follow up the issues. Now, organization here also means that they are very well, there is a particular order. Like for example, in our school, if you see the organization of our school from top to bottom, at the top to run is the leader, that is the headmaster. Then we have the assistant headmaster, then the supervisor, then we have the class teachers, then we have class monitors, and then we have the class. So it is a very structured organization for the smooth running and also for the betterment and for the good functioning of the school. Without an organization, it becomes difficult to follow up the issues. Here it means if there is no organization, there is no discipline, there is no proper setting up of things, then always there will be a problem. For example, farmers organization works for farmers movement. Any movement requires public support. So public support is very important when it comes to a movement. People should feel connected to the issue. Here this is very important. People should feel connected means I should also feel personally, every person every individual of the country should feel personally that yes, this problem even I am facing, and even in the future generations to come will face. So I have to also take the initiative. I have to also decide to do something so that I can help make the society a better place. Movements have a program of action which helps them to share public opinion. Now, movements are very important is because many times these movements are purely social movements. They have nothing to do with politics and politicians. Though in today's times, many times politicians spoil these movements, but still, people are there. Many people are there within our country who try to keep this as a social movement because they know that if we want to change, then the change will come when every person in the society has a chance to share his or her opinion. The moment in a society or in a democracy where people are not given chance, or individuals are not given chance, or a person is not given chance to share his or her own public opinion, it can happen that people can lose their interest in everything that is happening, and the society can be in a total chaos. We will not be a good happy society. Now, why movements? Now, it is very important we study why do we require movements. All the people in the society cannot participate in political parties and contribute to social welfare. Some people focus on a particular issue and pursue it. Particular means one single issue. They feel that is important. Some of the people do. And pursue. Pursue means they keep going behind and behind that issue, try to solve only that issue how much they can. They organize people and try to pressurize the government to resolve that issue. That means they bring people who have the same opinion together and try to bring the attention of the government to solve that issue, build a public opinion about it, and thereby put a pressure on political parties and the government. This type of organized activity is called a movement. That means many times the government does not pay attention to certain problems. The government is many times many things are very politicized, and because of that the government loses a track on keeping an attention towards the people. This is where the the movement or the movement that is organized by the people comes together. They try to constantly bring the attention of the government towards the particular problem. Now, organized activity is the essence of any movement. Organized activity means they do something. They try to show that this is really the problem. For example, in the Chipko movement, what was the organized activity? Wherever they would go to cut trees, the people around from the surrounding villages would come and surround the trees and hold the trees together. So they would not, that was an organized activity. So it is very, very important. Different social problems come under discussion through these movements. So for example, they have started maybe one Swachh Bharat, but what are the different problems? Other social problems. For example, a person who is sweeping is not respected. He is looked, because he is a sweeper, he is always looked down. So that is a social problem. So how to solve this? How to bring respect? How to give respect to those people? The government then has to pay attention to such problems. Leaders and activists of the movement provide necessary information about these issues to the government. This information is very useful for the government while making policies. Some movements aim at opposing a particular decision or a policy of the government. The right to protest any decision is considered an important right in democracy. However, this right needs to be used patiently and responsibly. Now, if you are going through the news these days, you will be coming across something called farmers all over India are protesting, are unhappy, and they have blocked the railway, especially in the state of Punjab. The reason is why, because there are two or three different acts, laws that are passed by the central government, and the farmers are telling that whatever we are producing and whatever we are selling in the APMC or the wholesale market, we will not get that much amount. The reason is because they fear that private operators or private companies will enter these wholesale markets, and they will not give us the minimum price that we produce to sell in the wholesale market. So, and they have many other issues which they feel the government did not discuss with them, did not consult them, did not take the consideration, did not take the opinion. So therefore they are protesting. They want the government to hear. They want the government maybe to take back that law or bring some changes. Important movements in India. Let us see some important historic movements. Civic problems need not originate only in social sphere. They can emerge from any section of the society. In India, especially in Maharashtra, many social reform movements were started and society started getting modernized. Our struggle for independence was also a social movement. The issues like protecting rights of citizens, right to vote, minimum wages, and economic security are the focus of political and economic movement. Swadeshi movement is an important economic movement. Now, if you see, these are different movements which are already there in the past. If you see a 9th standard textbook, these are there different social in many of the chapters, uh, like for example, women's empowerment and other weaker sections. Then we have education. So many of these movements are already discussed in that. So we'll not go to discuss again, but you try to review back and go back to your past that you have learned. Swadeshi movement. Today, if you see something called another form of Swadeshi movement is Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. That means almost the same. That means whatever we have, we create on our own. We don't buy or we don't go to other countries and trade with them. Give us this, give us this. Rather, we try to have it on our own. We try to make it on our own. It is a very good initiative, and we hope the country someday succeeds in becoming an independent and self-reliant country. Now let's go to this tribal movement. This is very important, is because we must have not heard about this, because generally we don't come across with so many tribal people since we are living in the urban areas, cities, so we don't know much about them. Let us understand. In the pre-independence period, the British government deprived tribal people of their right to livelihood on forest resources. That means before independence, the Britishers took away all the land, and they said since the whole of the Indian continent is under their control, they said nobody has control over their land without their permission. So even the tribals who were living in the basic forest area or maybe uh, areas where they were cultivating, what the land that they owned was taken away from them. And secondly, even if they had to go into the forest to get, they had to pay taxes. So the everything, the basic means of their livelihood means the basic means on which they could survive to eat, and everything was taken away, or else they had to pay. So this was actually a very very uh, standing point for the tribals. They could not bear this suppression oppression. There was a tribal uprising in Kolan from Chotanagpur, Gond from Orissa, Koli, Bila, and Ramoshi from Maharashtra, Santhal and Munda from Bihar. So these are very very important tribal movements that happened before the independence of India when the Britishers were ruling. Well, much of you don't know, but for example, the Santhal and Munda in Bihar are very very strong people. Strong in the sense they are socially very strong. They are a tribe. Secondly, they are the ones who organized these tribal movements. They are like heroes there, national heroes for them. They might not consider many of our other national heroes, but these are their national heroes. Okay. The tribal struggle has continued since those years. Tribals in India face several problems. One major problem is that they are denied rights over forest. That means what the tribals feel from that time and even today, because the tribals, as per the study of the human history is totally different part of history. It is not like this history that we are studying, that is called anthropology. In that, it clearly states that the tribals are actually the original inheritors of our Indian subcontinent. Even before you, me, and coming, the tribals are the actual people who own the whole country. But when the Britishers came, they lost their rights. So even today, they are telling that the forest belong to us. The main demand of the tribal movement is to accept their rights over forest. That means they say that we are the sole owners of the forest. We don't have to do anything with your cities, your land of cultivation, but we want to be as you. They want the people, the government, the society to accept them as the owners of the forest. They should be allowed to collect products of forest and also should have a right to cultivate on forest land. Farmers movement in India. Now I have already discussed to you about the recent farmers movement, but let us read what is there. If you see in the backdrop, there is something called Green Revolution. Now let us see what happened that time. This is after the independence of India. Farmers movement in India is an important movement. During the British period, farmers started getting organized due to anti-agriculture policies of the British colonial government. Some of the farmers movement against revenue collection was held in Bardoli and Champarayana. The farmers movement was inspired by the thoughts of Mahatma Phule, Justice Ranade and Mahatma Gandhi. Due to some reforms in agriculture, tenancy laws, laws related to tilting of the land, etc., the farmers movement slowed down. In the previous slide, we spoke about farmers movement. Now let's see what are the issues or the demands that the farmers have or their movements have always demanded. The first point is appropriate price for agricultural products. If you see the current agitation or the current farmers protest that is going on, they are also asking on a similar baseline or a similar pattern where they are asking that minimum MSP, the short form is MSP, minimum support price. That means whenever they go to sell in, for example, wholesale market, that is called the APMC, or if, for example, even if they have to sell to a private person or a private company, they want that minimum support price to be everywhere uniform. Agriculture to be treated as an industry. Even today, agriculture has not been given the status of industry. So because of that, many parts in agriculture, the production as well as the processing as well as the transport and all that is not treated like an industry. So many things are not in place. Implementation of the recommendations of the Swaminathan Commission. Next, debt relief. Debt relief means, for example, a farmer has taken loan, but due to certain problems he is not able to pay the loan in time. So certain amount of extension should be given, certain amount of subsidy should be given, or else the loan that is taken, the interest rate should be a little bit lesser than the other interest rates. Then debt cancellation, that means if the farmer is not able to pay the loan, for example, now farmer has taken loan to grow his crops of grapes, but unfortunately the grapes have grown, everything has done, but unfortunately it so happens unseasonal rain starts and the whole crop of grapes is completely destroyed. Now here the whole loan amount that the farmer has taken, he is not able to pay a single rupee back, is because he has no money, he has not sold anything. So in such circumstances they want debt cancellation, means complete cancellation of the loans that are taken. And national policy for agriculture. So the farmers movement, they demand for a national policy. That means there should be a uniform policy where everybody should, all the farmers should be treated equally. It should not be like that. For example, in one particular state farmers are given this much loan and this much interest, but in another state they are given a loan but very high interest rate. So that should not be there. It should be completely treated as an equal form. Trade unions. Now trade unions, let us see. Trade union in India emerged in the background of industrialization. Textile industry, railway companies were established in India in the later half of the 19th century. In 1899, railway workers went on strike for their demands. The first organization for resolving issues of the workers was established in 1920. So if you see, the trade union dates back to even 1920. That means we can say 1920 and 1890, that is much before our independence. This organization is known as All India Trade Union Congress. In 1960s and 70s, trade union movement organized several agitation. Now if you see, trade unions, what are they? They are basically the backbone or the support system of the workers in that particular company. Every company or every workplace has a trade union, and these are very important. The reason is because many times the people who are running the company, or many times the people who are the decision makers in the company, at times don't seem to understand the difficulties or the demands put forward by the workers. So this is the time when these trade unions come in the scene, and they try to bring pressure on the government as well as the company owners and managers and traders to make the problems solve as well as look into the issues of the workers. But from 1980s, trade union movement started getting disintegrated. Disintegrated means the trade unions were no more strong. They were no more that important. Importance was not given. Globalization has affected this movement to a great extent. In India, workers are facing different problems. For example, unstable employment condition, contract labor, financial insecurity, absence of legal protection for workers, unlimited working hours, insecurity at the workplace, health hazard, etc. I will talk about all these points first. Unstable employment conditions. That means, for example, the laws that are made to protect the worker today are not having any more importance. If the person who's employing a particular man to work in his company, if he says, I don't want you, he is getting somebody else at a cheaper rate. So he will throw out this man and take the second person. Another problem nowadays that we are facing is contract labor. I'll give you a simple example. You must have all heard about Maruti Suzuki. Just last year, in the same time, somewhere in before um, December, suddenly Maruti Suzuki announced that they have no money. They are going in loss. People are not buying their cars. So much so that Maruti Suzuki laid off. Laid off means removed around 15,000 workers, they say. And the whole car industry in India completely came to a stop last year. And they say around 4 lakh workers, they are telling the estimated number, around 4 lakh or 3 lakh workers were jobless. And who were these workers? All of them on contract basis. They were all contract laborers. And when a report was removed by the government and which was brought in the newspapers, it was found out that Maruti Suzuki only employs 3,000 or 2,000 permanent laborers. Rest all the people going to work in the Maruti Suzuki plant, rest all who are working in the Maruti Suzuki plant, mind you, they were all contract laborers. Now, contract labor means that for a certain period, the employer or the company owner will take them and after some time remove them. So some of them were working for 6 months, some of them for 2 months, some of them for 4 months. But suddenly, if the company goes in loss, the company owner can tell them, please leave, I don't have money to pay you. Then second one, financial insecurity. Many of the companies keep telling, we are running into loss, we are not having production, and we are not having this, not having that, and they are not able to pay. At times the company or the employer pays lesser than what is the market rate for the laborer. Absence of legal protection for workers. Many of the laws are today almost become obsolete. Obsolete means they are of no use. Because of globalization, things have changed. There are different ideas, technology that are coming and replacing sometimes human labor. And so these need to be addressed. And many times these are the people who are not taken care by the government. Unlimited working hours. If you go to a country like France, New Zealand, Denmark, these countries have particular amount of working hours, and some of these countries have even made compulsory that weekends, that is Saturday, Sunday, it will be a holiday, or Sunday will be a holiday. But in our country, this does not happen to be. Some of the people just have to work, and there is no amount of timing. The more they work, the better. If they work lesser, then they get less salary, and that also the amount is very less. I know of a case where a family, all the members of the family, including the children, they go to work in a small garment factory, and in a month they are just getting around, per person is getting around 3,500 to 4,000. Insecurity at workplace. That means there is no insurance, health insurance, medical health insurance, nothing. Then health hazard. Health hazard means the conditions, working conditions are very, very dangerous. Women's movement. In the pre-independence period, progressive men in India initiated the women's movement. The women's movement aimed at eliminating injustice against women and ending the exploitation, helped them to lead a respectful life and participate actively in social life. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Mahatma Jyoti Rao Phule, Keshav Karve, Pandit Ramabai Ranade took initiative in ending the practice of sati and child marriages. Reforms such as widow remarriage, women education, and right to vote for women were possible due to the work of these reformists. If you see, many of these topics are already discussed in the 9th standard, and even we have discussed in our 10th historiography also. So many of these things are already discussed, so we won't discuss much on them. After independence, the constitution gave equal rights to women in all fields. In spite of this, women were not treated equally in several fields. During this period, women's movement aimed at women and they should be treated as human beings. So basically these movements were to initiate the idea in a male dominated Indian society that women are also human beings, because in spite after independence, though women were given equal right to vote, constitutionally women were given equal rights, but if you see, there were lots of problems that women face. In the latter period, women participated to a great extent in the movement against corruption, caste discrimination, and religious extremism, which made them aware of injustice against themselves. In India, women's movement is not homogeneous in nature, but they are taking up the issues like women's health, social security, financial independence, and empowerment. Today, this movement faces the challenge of equal education for women and giving women a status and prestige as human beings. The Waterman of India, Dr. Rajendra Singh Rana, also known as Waterman of India, has brought water revolution in Rajasthan. He became famous because of building thousands of johad in Rajasthan. He revived rivers in the deserts of Rajasthan. He formed an organization, Tarun Bharat Sangh, which worked for building 11,000 johad in hundreds of villages. All over India, he started a campaign for water conservation, revival of rivers, forest conservation, and wildlife conservation. His social movement is active for last 31 years. He won the Stockholm Water Prize, an award known as Nobel Prize for Water. So if you see, if you know the state of Rajasthan, a completely barren desert state. But today if you see, Rajasthan as such does not come in the news at all for lack of water, nothing like that. On the contrary, you see, one of the few states in India, in spite of being a desert state, today it is still considered as the number one foreign destination for foreigners coming who are coming for vacation. If foreigners come to India, they definitely go to Rajasthan. Just imagine what they will be having with them. Environmental movement. We are aware that environmental degradation is a serious problem at national and international level. At the international level, several movements are working to stop the deterioration of the environment. That means there are lots of environmental movements at the national as well as the international level, which are working to stop the degradation of environment, the deterioration of the environment. They want to save the nature, as we call in a simple terms. We see a significant international cooperation in this field. Many countries today are working together. In India, many movements are working on different aspects of environment. If you see Save the Tiger, that was one campaign that was started by the government, but then the people in these tiger sanctuaries and all over India, people took the issues so seriously that today if you see, we have lots and we have more tigers than the actual number that they had told. A time had come when all the environmentalists and others were telling that one day the tigers will disappear, but India has succeeded in stopping that, in reversing that. The environment movements are taking up issues like protection of biodiversity, protecting different sources of water, protection of forest, green belt, pollution of rivers, use of chemicals and their ill effects. Consumer movement. Now, what is consumer movement? You must have seen that Tata tea ad, Jago Grahak Jago or Jago India Jago. So they it's something like that. A consumer movement. Let us see what is consumer. Consumer means a person who is the buyer, or everybody who buys, who goes to a shop and buys is called a consumer. Consumer movement emerged in India after the Consumer Protection Act came into existence in 1986. This movement has a broad objective. The movement believes that each member of the society is a consumer. Due to the changing nature of the social and economic system, consumers face different problems. Adulteration. Adulteration means, for example, milk is there, water is mixed in that, that is called adulteration. Or for example, you are buying certain grains, but in that you get a lot of stones and other things, that is adulteration. Increased cost of items. For example, if you go to buy a cold drink in a shop, the actual price is 20 rupees, but the shopkeeper buys it for 22 rupees when the price is only 20. Frauds in weight and measures are some of the problem. Frauds in means, for example, they have a measuring machine scale, but under that they might keep magnet to increase the weight, or they might do some changes so that the weight might not go, the things that you buy will not give actual amount. The consumer movement works to protect consumers from such types of fraud. Such movements increase the participation of people in public life. The past 1980 movements are called neo-social movements as their nature is different from the earlier movements. These movements are issue-based. It means they try to organize issue-based mass movements. So basically, consumer movement is even alive today because if you see, if you feel that if you have bought a product, or you have taken a service from someone, for example, you have gone to a particular shop, you have gone to a saloon, but you did not find them doing their proper work and you are not satisfied, and you tell them that you have not done properly, but they are not ready to listen to you, so you can go to a place called consumer court. That means the consumer movement was successful in starting a consumer court, and there you can file your complaint and you can tell that you were cheated, or you feel that you have been misled, or you have been they have asked you more from you or something like that. We have now come to the end of this chapter. Thank you very much.